Venus, the planet of love, art, theatre, and entertainment, has just turned retrograde. And in the retrograde chart that is cast to Ujjain, Cancer is rising. This is a straight indication that this entire period, including the post shadow period and the pre shadow period, is an emotionally driven one. Apart from growing retrograde, Venus is also placed in conjunction with Mars in the sign of Leo. Leo is naturally not a great sign for Venus to be placed in because Venus doesn't feel much comfortable in fiery sign, and especially the one that is ruled by the sun. Furthermore, Venus is exactly the opposite of what Mars represents, and Venus is in conjunction with Mars. Mars is the planet of separation and war, while Venus is the planet of mingling and liaising. Naturally, the significations of these two planets don't go well together, and this conjunction of Mars and Venus is always prone to be some kind of friction-filled period. In the retrograde chart that is cast Ujjain, we know that Cancer is rising, and Mars and Venus are placed in the second house of family, income, and finance. So we already know that income and finance, along with family matters, is going to be a prominent theme during this period. It indicates some kind of important shifts or decision making when it comes to family and finance. There is no qualification that this particular period is good or bad necessarily, because that is dependent on individual charts. But the theme or the overall theme is going to be relationships or hidden agendas, especially in terms of relationships, and review and reassessment of relationships or collaborations or partnerships that we have been having over a period of time. And especially with Mars in conjunction with Venus that is already going retrograde, is an important period for us to kind of determine what kind of relationships that we want to be in, and what kind of collaborations that we want to make, and what kind of partnerships that we want to be involved in. A wind of caution is that we need not be decisive or conclusive during this period. But as I always say, and as many wise astrologers say, the theme of this period is again retrograde, and we need to review, reassess, and kind of see where we are leading, but not to be conclusive or decisive. Saturn is retrograde, now Venus has gone retrograde. So Venus stands for love, relationships, collaboration, liaising, aesthetics, art, and entertainment. According to the periods that you are living in, according to the matters that are most concerning in your life at this point, that are related to the significations of the Venus that I just listed down, it will be important for us to see where we are headed, and we need to kind of review and reassess all those paths, but not to make any decisions. In some cases, relationship might mean family, but in some cases, it might not. Relationships and family go hand in hand. So for some people, it might be relationships and family. For some people, it's just relationship because they have not entered into a family, or they have not converted that particular relationship into a family. At any point, it is important to analyze how the relationship is shaping and kind of see where we are headed. Mars, ruling the 5th and the 10th house for Cancer rising, is actually a Yoga Karaka. Yoga Karaka is a planet that rules an angle and a trine. 5th house is a trine, and the 10th house is an angle. Mars is primarily a Yoga Karaka and a planet that indicates luck, fortune, and brings beneficial matters for the Cancer rising. This period, although it promises to be a draggy phase because of multiple retrogrades like Venus retrograde and Saturn retrograde, we can consider that this period will also be a little bit of a beneficial one and also a progressive one, despite the progress being slow. Second house is the house of family and finance. Mars placed in the house of family and finance could mean a little bit of a derailment or a degradation in terms of financial matters. But you need not consider this as a major downfall, because Mars is primarily a Yoga Karaka, and ultimately there will be some kind of a benefit that we can look towards the end of this period, especially before the Venus retrograde ends. Some kind of income that is yet to be realized will be realized during this period, but the key is to hold on and be calm without getting into ugly confrontations or discussions that might lead to argument. Mars, the Yoga Karaka, is placed in the second house, but the Badaka, Venus, it's placed in the second house as well, and it's turning retrograde, and that is the major topic of discussion now. Venus, ruling the 4th house and the 11th house, is the functional malefic or Badaka for cardinal signs, and Cancer is one of the cardinal signs. And Venus placed in the second house might bring some expenses that we did not expect. There will be some unexpected expenses and we may have to go through these periods without much choice, so we may be forced. So this might be because of something that's from the past, or the decision that we made in the past, or the choice that we made in the past that's coming back to backfire at this point. But I don't think it's anything major. So it's a period of frustration, especially in terms of family and finance. Because of difficulty in finance, we will be finding it a little difficult to maneuver the family matters. We will be forced to make some major decisions or come to conclusions, especially that's related to family. But I don't think it is wise to come to a conclusion during this period, especially with Venus being retrograde in the second house of Leo. And for those who have Venus as Time Lord, and for those Venus is actually placed in Leo, or Venus is hitting one of those points by square or opposition, it will be important to hold your ground and stay focused but not make any decisions. Venus retrograde always brings out to the world some of the most important or difficult things, especially related to sexual relationships. This tends to tarnish people's images, and we need to focus staying truthful to the current relationship that we have at this point of time. If there is anything that we need to let go of, I think this is the perfect time to let go of, as I said, review and reassess. As I discussed in the newsletter and the note that I wrote for Sun in Cancer, this period is scandalous. Not just because Venus is retrograde, but there are various other factors, and Venus' conjunction with Mars and Sun in Cancer dealing with emotions makes this period scandalous. So because Sun is placed in Cancer and Venus is placed along with Mars in Leo, the passion is already there. But self-control has to come in front of all these things so that we can save our face and dignity. The moment we abandon dignity, things are going to be very difficult, because Saturn in Aquarius is opposing Venus, and hence we need to draw boundaries and we need to have limitations for ourselves. Various events have been taking place across the world, and what really caught my attention because of this Venus retrograde is what happened in Italy. Not more than 2 or 3 days ago, Italian court ruled a sexual harassment case in favor of the plaintiff. 17-year-old woman was groped, but apparently the court ruled in favor of the plaintiff, saying that the episode was less than 10 seconds, which doesn't constitute as a sexual harassment. This is one of the most unacceptable decisions across the human race everywhere in the world. So looking at Italy's chart, we have Scorpio rising, and Mars is placed in the 8th house. Mars in the 8th house naturally describes outrageousness, and Mars also indicates litigation. So litigation, outrageousness, outrageous decision from a litigation or some kind of a court proceedings or the case. Venus is placed in the 7th house of Taurus, and the transiting Venus is actually placed in the 10th house of Leo in the Aries Ingress chart. Venus retrograde is conjunct with Mars, and the Aries Ingress Mars is placed in the 8th house. So there is this natural promise of a decision that is not very conventional. Mars also rules the 6th house of Aries. 6th house is the house of litigation. The ruler of litigation and the natural ruler of litigation also, Mars, is placed in the 8th house. Mars is conjunct Venus by transit, and the transiting Venus has just turned retrograde. The Sun in Cancer is indicating that emotions are running high during this time when the court makes such a retrogressive ruling that directly affects the safety of women. Now let's go back to 2015 to study the story of Greece, where the Greek Prime Minister resigned. Venus, apart from personal matters, also has an important say in politics. If we look at history, some of the major important court decisions or political decisions have always happened during Venus retrograde. In 2015, the Greek Prime Minister resigned. In the Aries Ingress chart, we can see that the 10th ruler Sun is placed in the 6th house of Aries, along with Mars indicating separation of the government and the leader. During the early August, when Venus was retrograde in the 10th house of Aries Ingress chart, the Greek Prime Minister resigned. Venus always indicates major social events that might change the perspective of people in that area or might raise the eyebrows of many people. Venus also indicates political turmoil, and this is just one example. If we go back to August 1998, when Venus was again retrograde in Leo, a major scandal involving the then US President Bill Clinton's sexual relationship with Monica Lewinsky broke out, and this completely shook the entire nation. Interestingly, Venus is placed in the 10th house of Aquarius in the Aries Ingress chart, while the ruler of Aquarius, Saturn, is debilitated in Aries. And this indicates the nature of controversy and also the secrecy behind it. This precisely broke out when Venus was retrograde in Leo, exactly opposing the position of Aries ingress chart. Venus retrograde also forms a conjunction with Rahu of the Aries ingress chart in Leo, and this is a real literal manifestation of Venus retrograde. For as long as we can remember, Venus has been going retrograde in Leo and going back to Cancer following its retrograde motion. Astrologer Lynn Holt pointed out that for the past 211 years, Venus goes retrograde in one sign and it always falls back to the other sign. But this is the first year when Venus won't go back into Cancer and it's going to completely stay in Leo throughout its retrograde phase. Taking lessons from the past, I think it is important for us to focus on the right things and do the right things at the right time.